Flashing Siren Crew, Season 10 starting now. What's flashing? Welcome to Season 10, Episode 4, with me, your host, Lashanti the Siren. And today's guest is Tarran Simms, a climate activist and sustainable development specialist. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Lashanti. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. And you are one of those guests that I've been trying to get on the show for so long. So I was so happy to finally get you here and have what I know is going to be an amazing conversation.
So happy to be here.
So let's start off. Can you tell us a bit about what was it that kind of your educational background and your experience that kind of brought you to where you are in your career? Like what inspired you and then what got that ball rolling for you?
So I actually entered undergrad. So from high school, I wanted to go into tourism. And so it was in my mind that I was going to be the next general manager of some hotel. And so I went into COB, started studying tourism. And about 3 years into my degree, I went to a Kiwanis meeting. And I can remember the lecturer's name, Lisa Benjamin. She was doing a talk. Coincidentally, I was there, like, hadn't planned to go there, stopped at the meeting. She was doing a talk on the Small Island Sustainability Program. And she showed the different cognate areas and the interdisciplinary nature of the degree. So studying sustainability, and they had a focus on ecotourism and development. And I was like, wow, I always loved nature. 3 years into my degree, it seems like fun. So the next day, I actually went to my advisor, asked her about it. And a week later, I changed my major. I tacked on an extra year to undergrad, but I would say that extra year was definitely worth it because the journey has been amazing. So I
double major when you did that?
So I ended up changing over from tourism and going into the Small Island Sustainability Program. And because I shared schools, so I was in the School of Chemistry and Environmental Life Sciences and the School of Tourism for the tourism background. And so I had done a lot of my tourism classes for it. Just had to get some of the science classes done and policy classes. But I think that degree program definitely set a lot of us up for success. It was multifaceted. We learned about sustainability, but not just in a silo. And I think that a lot of time when we're doing work in sustainable development, we tend to just think about the environment, right? I've been on research trips where people have bastardized communities, etc. But we forget the social and economic part of it. And with the Small Island Sustainability degree, it definitely taught us to think holistically when we have a sustainable approach and how to develop sustainable products. And so for me, I looked at sustainable destination development.
That is lovely. And so when you finished that degree in undergrad, did you go straight into another degree? Did you go and work a bit? What did you do next?
So right after undergrad, I can remember it like yesterday. I took just a semester off before grad school. No, sorry, a year off before grad school. And I was in Nassau. I was working at Atlantis part-time. And I just got into concierge. And I spent about 3 months there. I guess a coat tie and a suit was not for me because I read a book one night. I came home frustrated from work, read a book. An advisor gave me The Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss. And I read that book, and one part of the book said, there comes a waiting place, waiting for a car, waiting for a bus. And I felt like I was in a waiting place after undergrad because, you want everything to happen rapidly. And so I messaged my advisor. I'm like, I'm not happy with my job. I didn't study this. So she was like, do you want to go to Andrews before grad school? I was like, yeah. It was 2014. Her family would have opened up Small Hope Bay Lodge and Androsia. I flew out Monday, came back Tuesday and resigned from my job. Took a huge pay cut, but I enjoyed it. So spent a year in Andros at Small Hope Bay doing the environmental coordination, developing their environmental management system. And then I went off to school in Spain. So I attended a French business school, the Costa Commerce de Paris, in Madrid. And when I went there, I went into a business degree. And I did that for very intentionally. Whilst I was in my undergrad, I noticed that, um, so I did a lot of analysis on developments, tourism developments there, and there are a lot of arguments. Bahama was just being built. They were people in the Cable Beach Strip was arguing about the environmental degradation, and nobody was listening to each other, right? So you have the environmentalists arguing here, the developers arguing here, the community arguing here, social, economic environment, and nobody is listening to each other because nobody understands each other. So the environmentalists necessarily don't approach a businessman and say, well, your 10-year return on this investment from saving this ecosystem can be X amount of dollars. So business economic people only, they think in dollars, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the social is just like, leave it as it is, but they still want jobs. And so the business degree threw me into a class filled with business students as an environmental student. But I still focus on, while studying the business degree, I focus on sustainable destination development. So for my thesis, I would have worked with the Bolivian government, Bolivia, in an area called Tarija, and they were diversifying the economy from an oil-driven economy and they were adding on a tourism element. And so I went down with a consultancy team, and we developed it's two sides: tourism, a wine tourism product based on sustainable principles, and a burden tourism product based on sustainable tourism product based on sustainability. So that was the first master's. And then I jumped back to an environmental degree for my third master's, went to the University of Malta, and I looked at climate change and its impact on the tourism sector from a small hotelier perspective. So looking at what capacity needs to be in developing that sector to build more adaptive capacity, especially for locally owned hotels.
Right.
So that was my educational journey.
Yeah. So when you finished that last master's, what did you do next? Did you come right back into tourism? Did you go into the nonprofit sector, government sector? Tell me a bit about that.
So after that, I got a job. I went back to Andros when I came home. I love Andros.
Why not?
And at that time, the Ministry of Tourism, they were executing a project. They got a grant from the IDB after 2015. So in 2015, the new fisheries legislation came out, flash fisheries regulations. And under that regulation, I know one of the articles, their guides are required to have a certification. And so that certification didn't exist. And I was hired to coordinate that project for the Ministry of Tourism. So we developed a sustainable flash fishing certification. We did capacity building, and then we placed that certification into BAMSI to sustain that. And so currently the certification is in BAMSI. I guess as we continue to talk, you'll see how that certification came from that certification to a slew of other certification and a tourism master plan for Andros. So jumped straight into the Ministry of Tourism, stayed there until last year, 2023 March. And next month makes me a year as the Assistant Director for Conservation and Sustainability Programs at BAMA.
Right. So you jumped from government all the way into private sector.
The
What was
private
that
sector.
like?
And then, so different. But I like the journey because what happened is that jumping from government to private sector, in the government, I was helping to create policy and influencing policy, legislation, etc. Now I'm implementing. And I had a eureka moment the other day. I was on a call, and where you have to start reporting our emissions, and I'm like, wow. When I was in government, we were talking about this and what we need companies to do. Now, on the other hand, I got to do the reporting. So
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
And I know you've also had some work in the nonprofit sector. Can you tell me a bit about what that's been like in that, and then being able to see all three perspectives around the environment and conservation?
Yeah. So for the nonprofit sector, my first experience with the nonprofit world was actually in 2010. I took a gap year. I tacked a year on, well, a year and a half, because when I started the sustainability degree, before I went into it, I jumped up and went to the island school, and I was a research intern for the Queen Kong program.
Nice. With
So pretty
community
much,
conk?
pardon?
With community conk?
Now, so before I worked with Community Conk, I worked with Erin Cash. So she was an
Ooh,
Auburn grad student then,
nice.
and she came back home to do her research, and so we spent days in conch middens, dead conch pals with transects, getting dragged across the ocean, cutting conch, and that was an amazing experience. Then I went into her. That's how I met Catherine Booker and
Yeah.
Martha Davis with Community Conk, and I still help out with Community Conk up to the day. So I just
Nice.
wrapped up on some social stuff for them about 2 years ago. After that, whilst I was in Andros, I got a chance to lead Andros Conservancy and Trust for a year with
Nice.
Peter Douglas and Gabrielle Douglas. And now I'm on the board of directors for the Small Oak Bay Foundation. And how that started, so when I went to Small Oak Bay, we started community free dive programs. So we noticed in Andros that several things. A lot of the young students they didn't have their diving certification. You know, a lot of behemoths don't have that unless you're working in the dive sector.
Yeah.
Really,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of behemoths really don't have it. And so the owner was like, "Tarran, what can we do?" I was like, "Let's offer free certifications, because each dive resort per amount of PADI certifications you get free certifications."
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
So we started doing that, and we had low enrollment. And then we were like, a lot of people can't swim, so we can't certify them. So we started from primary school to adult swim lessons, and we were doing that, and we were doing it out of the company's purse. And I can remember there was a guest. She was a lawyer, and she's like, "You guys are doing this amazing work. Why don't you let guests contribute to it? You know, we can give money." And she's like, "Even better, I'm a lawyer. I can get my law firm to do a 501c3 for you guys." We were like, "Okay." And so Nathan Watkins, the largest law firm in the U.S., did a 501c3. And now the foundation is to the point where we just hired our first employee at the foundation a month
Wow.
ago.
Congrats.
Hi, Jasmine, if you're here. And so it's going really well. So we've built the program for that nonprofit. So we do free dive certifications. Um, Not only open water, we go straight up to dive master. And then from dive master, if that person is dedicated and see that they want to do this as a career, we would sponsor their instructorship. And it's all a part of, and they don't necessarily have to come and work for the resort, but it's creating sustainable livelihoods for young persons in Andros.
Mm-hmm.
And it also works as a diversion program because this young person, you know, who knows, maybe they find joy in diving. They could travel the world with this dive instructorship now, and it can
Mm-hmm.
divert them from doing something else.
Yeah.
The swim programs are still there. We have these, and we're about to start our sea urchin program. And
Nice.
so that foundation is doing really well, and it's something that I think that's a favorite part of everything that I do. The foundation work is some of my favorite part of it is fulfilling.
Mhm. So what would you say from your perspective, which is obviously you have this 3, these 3 lens, how should these 3 entities work together? I mean, obviously, we need some sort of working together, but then you need some sort of accountability because a lot of times, the private sector needs to be held accountable by the nonprofit sector, and also the government sector needs to be held accountable by the nonprofit sector to hold the private sector accountable. And it's like this ring and it goes round and around. So how do you see is like the balance between these 3? Like, what does that ideal situation look like?
That ideal situation. One, the government have very limited resources. So therefore, the nonprofit sector can fill a lot of those gaps
Mhm.
with the funding that they get. Um, then when it comes to the private sector, again, they can fill gaps that the government cannot necessarily fulfill. In my head, how it works, we're data scarce, and we have very limited research capacity within the public sector. Because those competent individuals in the public sector, they're trained.
Mhm.
Um, so when we look at it, we can use not the private sector, the nonprofit sector, to facilitate the research that we need, and then the private sector can provide that funding for the research needed to be done. Also, we need to look at like serious multifaceted committees in this country. not committees where you just put people there to be there. People who are dedicated, nonprofit, private, and government sector, especially when we look at research in this country from an ecological standpoint. People who are working in the field, people who are developing, the people who are working in the field and the people who are developing the policies, there needs to be connectivity because policies have to be pragmatic, right? You have to be informed in order to have policy that people actually follow.
Yeah. And and my team had told me when I titled this episode that I should have used sustainability instead of conservation. And now I wish I listened to them because this is such an important sustainability topic to have. And to the point you made about the private sector can help with funding, the private sector can also support with in-kind support. Like all these hotels and resorts have boats. Like if you just in the middle of the day on your trip, you can take researchers to a site and then just bring them back. That's the kind of things that could also be so helpful for the nonprofit sector. So I love that there's such a dynamic that can be perfectly balanced and at play, and we're making efforts to get there. So I definitely look forward to that as well.
And that's another big emerging tourism market when it comes to regenerative tourism. When you look at the numbers now, a lot of visitors, like that is Booking.com the other day spoke about it. Visitors are looking at leaving destinations better than they met it when they come. And so I know Virgin Atlantic has something on the horizon with regenerative tourism. Their team is doing a lot of research on that. There's a project that we did at the ministry before I left. And I was smiling because it got launched a couple of weeks ago, and I was watching it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was freaking out. It's like, I helped with that. It's called Mission for Mangrove. And so what we did in Grand Bahama, so you have the Bahamas Mangrove Alliance, but then from tourism sector, like, we have all these visitors coming, Conservation Cove, which is Coral Vita, the mobile conch hatchery and water keepers, they have a nice setup. And so we train taxi drivers in environmental conservation and how to plant can you hear me?
Oh, yep, you're back.
Oh, perfect. So we trained taxi drivers. Can you hear me, Lashanti?
I can hear you again now. Yeah, you cut out really quickly again.
Give me one sec.
No worries. It's like leaving everyone on suspense. We train the taxi drivers.
Yeah, we train the taxi drivers on how to plant mangroves. And so how the tour goes, you get picked up. The taxi drivers give you a tour of Freeport, of the island, tell you about Conservation Cove. You go to Conservation Cove and you buy mangroves to go plant. So you buy the mangroves, then you go to Lukai National Park and you plant those mangroves with taxi drivers. So the taxi drivers are called STOTES, SOTE, SOTS. So it's STOTS of the environment. And so you go with one who's been properly trained, plant those mangrove, and just from the tourism sector, using tourism as a tool for conservation through visitor support.
I love that. And that goes back again to that in-kind support. Like, you're right. There are a lot of tourists that come here and have a genuine appreciation for the beauty of our environment and also want to make sure that they're doing the things that can, help and not hurt. And so hearing that program's being offered, it's amazing. I didn't even know that. And I think that's such an amazing thing. And I hope that that's something that can be replicated on all of the other islands really soon, especially somewhere like Apico and other areas of the country that need that mangrove restoration. So awesome.
Definitely.
Nice. So, and I know earlier, sorry, go.
Visitors really want to do those type of activities, they ask, and they're also, they're willing to pay more. So I guess later on, I'll tell you about some research that we did. I'm looking at community-based tourism and nature-based tourism and what the results were from the research from visitors.
Okay. Yeah, we can, yeah. So yes, before we dive back to that and come home, I would like you to talk a bit about your work and travel experience that you've done with Youth Climate Action. And I know your Instagram tag is Bahamian Nomad, which I thought was so like cute to tie along with this topic. So can you tell us about how the work that you've been doing has taken you around the world?
So I got a knack for traveling from I'm very young. I remember my mom, when she was 15, she did a 9-week European tour, and she would talk about it, look at the photos. I'm like, I want to do this. And so My first experience with work and travel. So as I was in undergrad, we had to do an internship, and I was determined not to do my internship in the Bahamas. I'm like, everybody do the internship here. I don't want to do this. So I went online and I found an internship in Spain. And so I went to south of Spain and I worked in a hostel because my undergrad capstone was looking at backpacking as a sustainable alternative to travel in the Bahamas. And
Wow.
so I looked at it because it was a light travel sector, and also it created economic disparity, not disparity, economic spread. And so it increased the multiplier effect because people would stay in destinations for more than 1 month traveling around. And I looked at using the mail boats as an alternative travel to our islands. And I found a
Nice.
lot of interesting articles actually on that. Again, let me stay on the topic. So I went to Spain, South Spain, worked at a hostel to interview backpackers, and I also did alternative, no, sustainable tourism development for them. So we did like rooftop gardening. I set up the rooftop garden for guests to pick basil and microgreens because they cooked at the hostel. And so that was my first international experience. By the way, that's how I got to Madrid because after that summer in Spain, I was like, I got to get back here.
Ah,
And that's how I looked for a grad school there. And then fast forward to 2017, I was working with the ministry, and a friend of mine sent me over a this was a scholarship to attend COP um, for that was what COP 23 in Germany under the Fiji presidency. I was at a bar actually, and I got a call on my phone, and it was this Indian young lady. She's like, "Can you be in Germany by next week?" I'm like, "Who are you?" And she explained it. And a week later, I was on a plane headed into Bonn for the UN climate change meeting. And that took me into the beginning of my work in climate action and activism. I attended the conference, and it was so amazing to see so much young people pushing policy work, influencing policy work. And so I did a lot of work with YUNGO, which is the official youth constituency of
mhm.
the United Nations Framework on Climate Change. I was a
Nice.
part of the it's called the bottom lining team, so the administrative branch. I did a lot of work with them, and some of the documents we actually got to produce. We looked at uh, Article 12 of the Paris Agreement, which is ACE,
Okay.
Action on Climate Empowerment. So
Mhm.
it looks at public participation, understanding of information, access to information, and also capacity building, which we need a lot in climate change. Smart adaptive adaptation measures can help a lot with communities. As simple as somebody knowing the impact of a hurricane can
Mhm.
actually prevent them from getting hurt, and also can help them save their properties.
Yeah.
We do look at these type of elements a lot, and so we help with the development of the rule book. So each article has a rule book that's developed, and so during that year, from me attending the conference, I'm starting to say, yeah, I got to attend a lot of other conferences. So one of them that I attended, we created the ACE rulebook. And so we had a youth conference, another youth conference after COP to discuss Article 12. These deals with a lot of young people.
Yeah.
And so we met in Bonn. We had a conclave, a lock-in for about 3 days,
Wow.
facilitated by rapporteurs. And we produced a rule book that we presented to the executive director of the UNFCCC. And it was accepted. They included it in the overall rule book. So that was one of a very proud moment of mine, working on this
It
rule
should
book and it being
be.
accepted. And again, that trickles into actually why I did my thesis. So looking at capacity building from Article 12, I then wrapped a lot of that information into my master thesis at the University of Malta. So looking at information sharing and understanding of climate change and what climate change is, perception study,
Mhm.
to link that to destruction. And so I found like what a lot of hotels, especially those who were in the sector for 10 years or less and hadn't experienced a hurricane, they didn't have hurricane insurance, they didn't know what a Caribbean was. They didn't have hurricane impact windows, etc. So they
Wow.
didn't even have small adaptive measures to help protect their properties. And
Right.
this is why understanding of what hurricane is and the type of impact you're going to experience and what you can do, small things you can do to
Mhm.
build adaptive capacity is so important.
Wow.
So yeah, um, that's my climate journey. My last COP was COP Egypt Sharm el Sheikh.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I continued to follow ACE, Article 12, but also did some following of loss and damage. So I think loss and damage to me is definitely something a lot every small island nation should be looking at right now.
Right.
But it took so long from 2012 to us just getting almost a rule book, which it still needs to be worked on.
Yeah.
So yeah, and now at Bahama, I am looking at data collection for carbon emissions
Nice.
from our hotel. So we're looking at our emissions, what we're outputting, so we can mitigate, and that's some work.
That I can imagine. It seems like every step of your journey, you've definitely touched on a lot of heavy topics that are so important for the Bahamas right now. And I almost feel like I need to bring you back on to talk about some of the other stuff that you've done. But I do want to shift gears. I know you mentioned the nature-based solutions in tourism, and I actually have a question in the audience that I think is the right time to bring up right now. And so Marjan, hey Marjan, she says, "Hi folks, just a question about the mangrove project with tourism. How do you monitor this? How do you monitor this to not cause problems in the environment and ecosystems with overplanting or messing with habitats? Are spaces already mapped out beforehand? Another question is how do you restrict tourists or ecotourists from not going off on their own and planting these mangroves by themselves? That's actually two great questions.
Yeah, very good questions. So the Mangrove Project is in collaboration with Bahamas Protected Area Fund and the Bahamas National Trust, along with the Bahamas Mangrove Alliance. So they provide the science, and it's done within the national park, so it can be guided and monitored by the National Bahamas National Trust. When it comes to restricting tourists from going to areas where they shouldn't, during the training, the taxi drivers are made aware of areas which should be restricted and to keep guests in certain areas.
And so, and I think just to also help answer that question, which I now wonder, so a tourist can't go and buy mangroves without one of these. I think you call
No,
them
they
so
have to go with the so.
perfect. That's actually excellent. And I didn't even think about the fact that there could be some tourists that would do that. Like
Would
they
do
just
that.
kind
Yeah,
of
they would just and
all good intentions, but
good
all bad
intentions.
actions. Nice. But and I know you did want to talk more about that, the nature-based I think I said the wrong term, nature-based tourism or
Nature-based tourism.
yes. So you wanted to talk a bit about that as well.
Yeah. So again, before I left the ministry, that was 2019. I attended a community-based tourism development workshop in Grenada
Mm,
by the Caribbean Tourism Organization. And so,
very
what the
nice.
Caribbean Tourism Organization did, they created this community-based tourism toolkit to one increase capacity in rural communities
Mm,
to make them market ready. We call it. So when we look at a lot of our rural communities, we say, "Oh my gosh, this is an amazing tourism product." So, for example, I always use Res Bay to explain to people like an amazing tourism product that we shouldn't take tourists to yet, unless it's guided. So when you look at Red Bay, if you go there by yourself, it's just a regular community. No signage, houses are there, but there's no significance to it, right?
mm,
But then if you go with a tall guy, I don't want to toot my own horn. I give a really good talk Red Bays. You learn the historical story about Red Bays, the Black Seminoles. That's not the colonizers not knowing they're there for over 100 years. How they still go to the powwow. You go
wow.
to some of the artisans' house. How they do their baskets very differently, and also I remember I did an experience in Red Viz because I got to know a lot the community really well. The best fry fish I've ever had. So I went into a lady yard. She
Good to
had
know.
a pot outside, a frying pan outside on rocks with coal, not coal, with wood burning. She fried the fry fish outside. She served it on a grape leaf, and we ate in the back of the yard. And she spoke about how she go to the powwow, spoke about a family, spoke about the community. That's a tourism product. And so when we look at product development, putting interpretive signs, ensuring that we give the community, like for example, you have Henry Wallace, who's one of the greatest wood carvers in the Bahamas, and a lot of people don't know about him. You go to his yacht, he'll show you how to carve. George Mason University would bring their students down for him to show them, and so you build the capacity of the local community to facilitate tourists, and then you have a market ready product. And so the workshop, I was trained in the workbook to give this course for anybody who's interested in doing a small tourism, nature-based tourism business. And so I came back home, and every participant in the course had to write a concept paper to Compete Caribbean, which is a subsidiary of the IDB, to build Caribbean economies. And so we developed these concept papers, and we did it based on nature-based tourism and looking at clustering. And so what we found in small communities, a lot of small and medium-sized businesses, they don't have the capacity to do their own marketing, HR. They have limited capacity. But we find out when they, what we call co-PT, they cooperate and compete at the same time, and they can grow their market share. And so the workshop, we did workshops. I did workshops North, Central, Mangrove Key, and South Andres, talking about this community-based tourism toolkit. So environmental understanding, economic. So it's simple as developing a balance sheet. How do you do that? Yeah. And then also looked at social empowerment and development. And so I wrote this project called the Andres Community-Based Tourism Cluster Project, working with creating a business web in Andres. So looking at tour companies, looking at transportation companies, we did hotels, and also small eateries on the island. So we brought them together to create 3 different clusters: Mangrove Key and South Andres, Central Andres, and North Andres. So it was based on, we had 3 different components: a training component, institutional development component, because we were looking at the cluster becoming a body. So creating like a cooperative, a multi-purpose cooperative, where they buy into the cooperative, and the cooperative do marketing, host HR workshops, also do training programs. They're also, in the concept paper, we developed like a visitor center. And so, people will say, oh, a visitor center is so small, but we hardly have any good visitor centers throughout our family islands, and especially like Andres. Then when you look at different models, like the German model, everywhere you go in Germany, there's a visitor center. And in the visitor center, you can book tours, you get an understanding and layout of the area. For example, people will call the Andres Tourism Office, right, if they want to book a fly fishing guide. But if you have this cooperative, the cooperative can develop packages with all the members. So they can say somebody wants to do diving, somebody wants to do fishing. They put that package together and they sell that package. 10% of that goes to the cooperative, and then the funds go to everybody who has bought into the cooperative. And so we developed that, and out of 55 projects, we made top 6, and out of the top 6, we won the competition. So we got $300,000 from the Compete Caribbean to execute the project. And again, about 3 months ago, I was watching TV, and the project was on the news. It was launched, and the marketing agency that is working for the cluster, because I still talk to my coworkers at tourism, they said the website looks amazing, it's about to be launched. The commercial that they're doing is about to be launched. And I'm like, wow, the work is, to me, it's very fulfilling because you're impacting life, you're building communities. And for me, when I look at the tourism sector, it's not visitor first, it's community first. What does the community need? What does the community want? How do we ensure that this is birthed from the community and the community owns it? And so I'm so happy to see that project thriving and still pushing forward.
I love that. I'm definitely excited to see that come out public too. It's very exciting. And I've never even heard the term business web before. So that's actually super interesting to hear that you were able to create a project that is now being implemented to do something that sounds like phenomenal work. Because and we
Yeah.
need that. And hopefully that can also be replicated across the other family islands because it's
Yeah.
so important.
And from that project, what happened is that um, so we had the fly fishing project that we have done in 2017. We folded it into that project, and we were like, so we don't replicate this in 10 years. Let's house it somewhere. So
Yeah.
we made a partnership with BAMSI, and the Ministry of Tourism actually hired somebody who worked in the nature-based tourism sector, who works at BAMSI to coordinate the recruitment of students to this project. But not only that, we took the burden training program from BNT, we built upon that and placed that into BAMSI. We
Nice.
also developed a nature tour guide program in BAMSI. And so if somebody wants to go into the nature-based tourism sector, they can go to BAMSI. They can do fly fishing, nature-based tour. They can also do bird guiding. And Banzi allowed for them to also get some academic classes. So what I found when I was a tour guide in Andres, my ecology classes and my geography classes helped me to give a value-added tour. Because I could talk about the porous rocks. I can talk about the ecology of the Bahamas and why tourists ask a lot of questions. Why does that rock look like that? Why is that water? Why the
They
waves like that?
do.
Why is the beach eroded? And so by providing these courses, um, tour guides can add value to their tours because of the knowledge they would have gained from these classes. So yeah.
Mhm. That is so exciting. And that brings me to my next question. What would you say is your vision for sustainability in the Bahamas in the next 5, 10 years?
Next 5, 10 years, I think the first step may sound simple, but it's the most important. I think it would become a more common term
Mm.
for in the next 5 years. I think that we need to start building more capacity in it. We need to implement it from primary school. So by grade 6, you should know what sustainability is, how to get engaged in sustainability. Remember when I told my mom I was going into small island sustainability, she's like, sustain who? What you gonna do? And it's like, how are you going to sustain yourself if you study
Mhm.
this?
Yeah.
But I think the capacity to be built definitely. But moving forward, I think I want to see us having a holistic approach to sustainability more, not just one-sided but tri-sided. Looking at the three pillars, how does this impact our local community? How does this build our economy for our people? And how do we save our environment? And I think when we bring sustainable livelihoods and we cross sector with conservation and sustainability, I think it works best. I always use fly fishing guides as an example. Some of the biggest environmental shots are fly fishing guides. And when we looked at the push for the 2015 flat fisheries legislation, that was birthed from fly fishing guides. When we look at mangrove protection, that was birthed from fly, advocated through fly fishing guides, because they understand that no mangrove equals no bonefish, and no
Yep.
bonefish equals no gas. And the fly fishing sector is very lucrative.
Hmm.
It accounts for about 4% of our overall arrivals, but 14 to 16% of our expenditure. So it tells you that fly fishing businesses have high purchasing powers. So therefore, that fly fishing guy don't want to lose his money. So he
Yep.
can make sure those mangroves are protected. So as we build our ecotourism product and our nature-based tourism product, it's important that we educate those individuals participating in this sector as a business.
Hmm.
We link the environment to the sustainable livelihood, so they'll be more inclined to protect it.
Yeah. That's awesome. And it's all next to the best question. The next best question is from Stefan. Hey, Stefan. All amazing stuff. The concept of the business web is definitely a smart and sustainable model. I know sometimes Bahamians can be hesitant to engage in new opportunities. How are these opportunities marketed to androgens? Which is a great question.
So um, when we pilot a lot of the programs, so we sponsored first cohorts. So for the fly fishing project, we were able to reallocate some funds. We sponsored 3 cohorts. We also use our partners from the private sector to, for example, one of the tour guides, Yellow Dog, who's an American company, they know that the Bahamas is one of their hot sellers. So what they did, they were like, we will provide the guide for the cost. And they also they developed a library. So we have a fly fishing library that's being developed in Andres. So a fly fishing rod, a good fly fishing rod is expensive, like $1,000. And so in this library, if you are doing the course at BAMSI, you're able to go in, check out a rod, check out a fanny pack, check out a hat, check out all of your gear, go practice your fly fishing, and then check it back in. And so they've developed that library. And so all of the cohorts that we did was only androgens. Only androgens were allowed to go into those cohorts. But all of the businesses that are part of the cluster, they are androgens. So that took a year, actually. Well, 2 years to develop the cluster. Because I don't know, the human businesses, the concept of working together ain't really there.
It's trust. It's trust.
Really there. But
that's what it is.
2 years of advocating, 2 years of holding workshops and running this course, and they were like, Eureka, it works. And so the consultant who's working for us over there now, she said, the cluster is coming together beautifully. People are working together. I pray that it sticks. And they can see the benefits of collaborating for a greater good.
Nice. And I love Stefan's comment. No better incentive than free things.
Things. We love things.
Definitely. And, as you talk about this, I can tell how proud you are and how you feel so strongly about this. And my next question is actually, what is one of your biggest accomplishments in your career? And would you say that that's what this is, or would you say that there's something else?
One of the biggest accomplishments in my career. Boy, I would definitely say, I think the Andres Community-Based Tourism Initiative is one of my proudest projects that I've worked on, and I love where it is going. Because one, I love nature, so that's how I got here. Actually, I left that apart in the beginning with why I changed to the sustainability degree. So when I was young, most of my summers were spent in Ragged Island. And so I would catch a mailboat down 2 days because no planes went there. My friend's grandmother would come out in her boat because the boat couldn't get into the island. Draft was, what they call it, the draft. I don't know boat language, but the bottom, you couldn't get in. And so my friend's grandma would come out in her boat, pick us up, take us back in. And we spent the summer, my friend spent the summer diving for conch. I couldn't dive. I'm a fish in the water now. So we spend going out for conch. We had our own little boat. We'll have picnics on a different island every Sunday because Ragged Island, the chain of islands, we go swimming. So I fell in love with nature. And so I really went into sustainability because I really got to be in nature every day. And I always make this joke with people of why I stayed at Andres for so long. I don't like shoes. So Andres allowed me to be barefoot.
I blame you. I am definitely also, if I don't want to wear shoes, in Nassau you got to. Everybody got glass balls everywhere, but I love that. I love that. And then we have sorry, we're gonna say something else.
Oh no, you can go.
Yeah, so we do have a comment from Lashanti. I love this so much because in looking at how we can explore and create a more sustainable environment across the country while creating opportunities for economic growth and introducing Bahamians to new spaces to build such amazing brands and businesses. And we also have another comment from Stefan. Totally understand, Tarran. We are doing a study on the work of the impacts of public trust and community engagement. So this is very helpful commentary. And Irene, that's at, I'm guessing, ORG Bahamas. So that is actually really important work. And I think the concept of co-ops, I learned about it many years ago. And I feel like I'm aging myself. But when I was on a trip to Inagua, and that was the first time I'd heard of even just the concept of a co-op. And the big topic there, which is why it couldn't work for them, is because not enough people were trusting each other to do a co-op, because you have to throw in X amount of dollars. And well, we lost Tarran. Hopefully we'll get him back soon. But you have to throw in X amount of dollars together to then wait to get returns on these investments. And for whatever reason, and I guess we'll find out from the study that Stefan is doing, Bahamians do not have good public trust in each other, in our government, in our jobs. So hopefully we can work together to get that done soon. So as I wait on Tarran to come back, I'm going to see if there are any other questions from our viewers. It seems that we've answered all. And I know some of the next things I want to find out from Tarran is, what's next for him, some upcoming projects. I was fortunate enough when I did my launch for my nonprofit, Tarran actually, he works at Bahamar and he works with the Bahamar Foundation. So he also helped me, helped me have my launch event, which was super, oh, he's back now, but which was super successful. And I didn't know he did all these things. He's clearly that behind the scenes person. So glad to have you back. I was just singing your praises about just being one of those people that really helps get things done. And so, and thank you again. I don't know if anyone attended and who's watching attended the event, but kudos to Tarran for being one of the reasons I was able to throw that off without a hitch. So,
and I think that's how we should work at the environmental community. When we have resources, let's collaborate with those resources, like share those resources, because we can't fix it on our own. Everybody has a part to play, and if we don't work together symbiotically, then we can't accomplish nothing.
Lovely. I do see some comments rolling in now. Thank you, Stefan. He's going to share some preliminary data with me. I hope you mean me and Tarran. Like, I think both of us are very interested in seeing what ORG Bahamas Foundation is doing. And Lashanti commented about the whole public trust issue. I can see how that may be perceived in a way that may be challenging, but this is an opportunity for us to push forward into a new space. I feel we as people take a risk for so many things, and she's right, down to ASUS, but this is the chance for us to invest in something for all. And so on behalf of the youth, she's gathering her coins. She's coming. And that's so true. Like, Bahamians seem to be so risk averse when it comes to co-ops, but we'll throw our money into things like numbers and ASUS like, without a second guess, So
I think that comes from the fact that we did not work together, and we don't understand the power of working together. We're very fragmented as a society, and from a macro level as a nation. We work in silos a lot, and you can see it in government offices. Nobody's sharing information or understanding the importance of us collaborating and working together. So, but that's some interesting work ORG is doing.
I know, yeah, I'm very interested in that. And ORG has been doing a lot of good work, and so I'm excited to see that data. But you're right. I think a lot of times when we think about, and if we just take a step and look at the Bahamian people as a whole, for whatever reason, there's been this underlying mentality, and you and I were touching on it a bit before the show, where it's like, I need to make sure my position is secure. So I don't want to share. I don't want to collaborate. Like, I don't want to, even when it looks at helping the younger generation step up, I want to sit in this position for as long as I can. So I need to maintain my value. And doing that means I can't share information. I can't share resources.
I got to hoard my information.
And for what?
As you were saying, that takes a lot of institutional knowledge. And what that does is that we have to keep on spending the same money over and over. I was sharing a story with Lashanti, when I went into the public sector. I was working on a project which we got a grant for. And I looked a month into the job, looked into the filing cabinet, threw all of the old documents to get a better bearing on the project. And the same knowledge products that we were producing had been produced in the early 2000s. I'm like, I could have used this grant funding to further build upon this and to actually implement it even further. And so we have to share information and work within ministries. We need to work together. And even we need to work together outside of ministries with other ministries and the private sector, inclusive of the nonprofit sector.
Definitely. And I have hope. I feel like our generation, which includes, I forget the age gap, I'll say 40, 45 and under. I don't know, they're not the dinosaurs.
You have there already?
Are we? Ooh, are we? I know it's us though. I know I think I see in our generation, just looking at some of the work that Stefan is doing, the work that you're doing.
Amazing work.
We are doing things and we are collaborating more. And I hope that sets the tone for the generation like Lashanti, those who are interested in following that lead. So I'm excited. I think we're moving in the right direction as a country.
And it's so cool that we all know each other. The environmental field is so small. Everybody somehow works together, either indirectly or directly.
Nice. And so as we start to wind down, can you tell us if there are any, like, what are some of the other things that we can look forward to seeing from you? Like, what's next? Any upcoming projects? Anything that you can share now?
So what's next? At Bahama, we're doing a lot of work, as I said, on climate change. I'm looking at our daily emissions. We're also looking at developing. I'm working with some nonprofits for coral restoration and mangrove restoration and incorporating our tourism product into it. So
Mhm.
from that aspect, it's looking good. Also, I'm working with an organization where we're developing some. I can't say exactly what we're doing, but it's based on funding. And so hopefully when that project gets launched, I hope that it can benefit the nonprofit organizations much better, not only from a financial standpoint, but also from an institutional development standpoint.
Right.
Um, Having worked with nonprofits a lot, especially being human-run nonprofits, um, there's a lot of disadvantage, right? Because of the understanding of developing the nonprofit, the what type of institutional mechanisms you need to have in place to be funding ready. And so we're looking
Oh, I know it.
to work. Was that
Don't I know it?
a lot of people look at the nonprofit sector like, oh, we can get $100,000, but if you aren't ready to facilitate that $100,000, because when they say, I need this to be audited, I need where the project deliverables, etc. So how do
Mhm.
we? Everybody means well when they develop a nonprofit, but I think a lot of nonprofits can benefit from capacity building and institutional development. And so there's a
Mhm.
project on the horizon dealing with that, where we could benefit the BME nonprofit community, especially in the ocean protection space. And then the second phase is providing that funding that's needed to execute this project, but
Mhm.
also looking at sustainable funding. How do we build organizations' capacity to show them about diverse funding mechanisms to ensure
Mhm.
that your programs are sustainable? Because
Right.
you have a lot of one-off programs because of funding. So
Right.
looking at institutional strengthening in the nonprofit sector and connecting it to funding.
Nice. You just gave me such a great idea, but I'll talk about it later. So, curious to know, if there are viewers that are listening, do you, in any of your capacities, offer sort of volunteering, internships, mentorships that you may offer? And if so, how can someone reach out to you? And I'll have your Instagram there, but
Internships, yep. So if you're interested in internships, especially in Bahama and our sustainability and conservation department, my email. Well,
no,
there's
I
my
can type it in
Instagram,
though for the comments.
and then my email is Tarran.Simms@bahama.com. So I actually have an intern starting in about 2 weeks.
Nice.
So she'll be working with us for about a month. And again, it was a full circle moment for me. So about 2 years ago, I started teaching at the University of the Bahamas as an adjunct,
Nice.
ecotourism and sustainable tourism development. And one of my students, 2 years later, she reached out and she didn't go through me for the internship, but she told them on her. She heard that I was working at Bahama, and she told them on her application she wants to work with me. She was one of my best students, and so it's good to get to work with my students now. It's so funny, like that makes me sound so old because
I'm
I
gonna
remember
say
when
boy your age.
I'm excited now to work with my lecturers at the University of Bahamas, and now she's excited to work with me as a lecturer from the University of Bahamas. But it's good that, as you said, we can help build the future generation whilst we're still being built from those who came before us. So as you said, we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, I love that. And so, my final two questions, the first being, who is someone in the sector, whether it be a local or international person, that inspires you and why?
I think I have uh, two inspirations. I have a lot of inspiration, but two people that I would definitely mention. Margot Blackwell. She was my undergrad academic advisor. Um, we had a lot of struggle, right? In the sustainability degree, we had seminar classes. and
Okay.
they were more of think tanks to tap into our mental understanding of sustainability and how we were feeling, because being in sustainability can be very frustrating sometimes, all the time, right? And so it guided us as students to, what are your feelings about this? So you have this feeling. How do you get over this feeling and continue to do the work that needs to be done? She's the reason I went to Andres. She challenges me when it comes to, especially being in the tourism sector. I was one of two ecotourism and development students during my cohort. And I remember the other cognates like the policy, environmental science, marine biology, like, oh, you studying tourism, y'all destroying the environment.
Yeah.
And through these seminar classes, we were able to dialogue with each other and how do our different disciplines intersect and help to create a sustainable development pie.
Mm.
So Margot definitely tapped into our brains. She played the devil's advocate a lot, but she made us think deep and long. And she also introduced the concept of consensus building. How do we develop um, fair decisions? And so
Yeah.
Margot definitely is one of those environmental heroes, along with a number of other lecturers at the University of Bahamas.
Mhm.
But then my next inspiration would definitely be, you know, um, to me, I get inspired and motivation from those who came before us. So the legends who would have worked in the field before anybody was saying conservation or sustainability.
Mhm.
So that's an Eric, that is Eleanor Phillips, that is Elisa Benjamin, who would have done the work and who would have given us the ability. A lot of us have either collaborated or worked at Bahamas National Trust, worked at
Mhm.
TNC, and we've worked under these individuals who would have developed the framework for us to now move forward. And so I would definitely give it to our environmental and conservation legends who would have ushered this in, who would have laid the framework and foundation, not only to do the good work, but to show us that there is work in this area that you can do
Mhm.
and you can have a sustainable life. Yeah.
I love that. And so my final question, which is really just asking you for your final thoughts, whether it be a quote that you kind of live by, a mantra that you say, or even just like a lesson learned throughout your time in this career that you want to share with viewers. So your final thoughts.
My final thoughts. One of the lessons that I I've learned a lot of lessons, but slow and steady. This is not something where you're going to see immediate results. Sometimes you're going to see the results 10 years later. But every small thing, take that in as an inspiration to keep on moving forward. And whether it's just starting your project and you haven't gotten the results, the monumental moment is starting that project to actually get the results that needed to be gotten. So go slow, don't be discouraged. Take it not full on, but as it comes, and just continue to push. Every small change creates a bigger change. So continue to push forward. And looking to work with each and every one of you who is there, and continuing to work with you, Lashanti.
Yeah, and I know, and Stefan definitely said, whenever that is, that secret mission you have going gets going, he would love to connect with you to work in that MPO sector development.
No problems, definitely.
Nice.
And we're
And I,
looking for to collaborate on that.
yeah, and I told you get final words to viewers. I feel like he's giving me a word just now. But thank you so, so much for being on this show. It's always a pleasure spending time with you. And I definitely look forward to probably bringing you back one day and even just hanging out with you outside of the show because definitely we got
Please.
a cocktail date that we've been
Exactly.
postponing.
Which
Oh,
a year now.
over a year, I feel.
Yeah,
Jeez.
we
But
need to do this.
yeah, but thank you for spending your Sunday afternoon with me. This has been such an
Thanks for
amazing
having me.
episode. I knew it would have been. And thank you to all the viewers for tuning in and watching another episode of Siren Sundays. Hope to see you all next week.
Thank you, Madam Siren, for having me. Have a great Sunday evening.
Thanks. You too.
Bye bye.